It was reported by the Israeli media that Indonesia had reached an agreement for normalization with Israel in exchange for them being admitted into the OECD. First of all, as if Israel decides who gets admitted into the OECD. Now, I know that there has been a problem with Indonesia joining the OECD because Israel is a member and all current members have to unanimously accept. And Israel had a problem with Indonesia's stance on Gaza. They objected to Indonesia being admitted into the OECD. But being admitted into the OECD is a long process, and there are many things that have to be met, and many conditions and terms and whatnot that have to be met by Indonesia or any country that's applying to join the OECD. It's not in one country's hand to say, yeah, you get to join now. As soon as I saw the news, I knew immediately that this is propaganda and it's false. Because for one thing, I have sort of followed the progress of Indonesia, because there was a whole thing about whether they were going to join BRICS, and then they said we're going to join OECD instead, and so on. So I've kind of been following it since then. So just common sense will tell you that this is complete trash, this what they're saying, because you would have to be insane to think that Indonesia is going to actually reach a normalization agreement with Israel while there's an ongoing genocide. You must be out of your mind if you believe that for a second. I don't doubt that there's discussions going on. I don't doubt that there's discussions going on about the possibility of normalization, because that's been something that's been rumored for a long time, that they've been looking at a country in this region, which means either Indonesia or Malaysia. Obviously, they would be more interested in Indonesia. It's a much bigger economy and so on. Also Malaysia's stance is very strong. But Indonesia's stance has been very strong with regards to Gaza. So you should be able to see immediately that this propaganda at this time it's ridiculous that you would expect anyone to believe it. But they can get away with putting this kind of thing out because why? They know that Muslims themselves will be the ones to propagate this propaganda unquestioningly, without any scrutiny, without any even common sense, applying common sense to the claim, to where you could just any normal person should be able to understand, first of all, that joining the OECD is a process with many steps and many, as I said, terms and conditions that have to be met by a country, and appraisals of the status of whether or not the country is meeting the conditions. To get approval to join the OECD can take years. So to actually believe just at face value that Israel gets to decide, we've reached an agreement with, if Indonesia actually signed anything that said we're going to normalize with you so that we can join the OECD, then that would mean that Indonesia doesn't even understand how you get to be joined into the OECD, that they don't even themselves understand the process if they actually think that Israel can deliver their membership into the OECD. It just, on the face of it, it's absurd. On the face of it, it doesn't make any sense. For so many reasons, like I said, for so many reasons, it doesn't make any sense. Yet, they can put out something that is, on the face of it, absurd, because they know that no one is going to spread it more than our own people, than Muslims themselves, who seem to have, there's a contingent of Muslims who are very active on social media, who seem to not only be susceptible to believing the worst about the Ummah and the worst about Muslim countries, but who seem to need to believe the worst. They get mad when the worst doesn't end up being the truth. They get mad if they can't actually be justified in thinking that the Muslims are useless and worthless and traitors and hypocrites and so on. They get mad when they find out that that's not true, and they won't accept it. And if you dare to stand up for the integrity of Muslims, then you're the one, you're accused of being a hypocrite or a bootlicker or what have you, or naive, or whatever terms they want to come up with, that you're a sellout, you're a shill, or you're whatever, if you actually stand up for the integrity of Muslims. And right from the beginning, you already have shown that you're not someone who cares at all about the truth.
Yeah.
You don't care whatsoever about what's true and what's not.
Yeah.
So that when I or anyone else debunks what you've said, you just move on to another complaint. You never actually process the information, process the fact that you've either been used to propagate falsehood against the Muslims, or you are active about that. And that's something you're dedicated to. You're not actually interested in what's true, so that when something is debunked, you don't say, "Oh, alhamdulillah, that's not true."
Yeah.
That's not your response. You just continue.
Mm-hmm. And you're always likely to be in the West somewhere.
Always, always, without fail.
Yeah.
Without fail.
Yeah.
You're in the West. Because all you actually want to do is hate on Muslims. You know, that's all you really want to do. Hate on Muslims, hate on their governments, hate on their rulers, everything. And just hate on Muslims generally. And say that you're doing all of that for righteous reasons. But yeah, so no, Indonesia has not reached an agreement for normalization with Israel. As I said, I don't doubt that they're in communication about that on some level, but most likely any negotiations that they were involved in that have been suspended completely over the course of this genocide. But yeah, I'm sure that there's negotiations, that there have been efforts to reach out, and there have been talks and so forth. I'm sure that that's something that's ongoing. But there's just like I said, on the face of it, it's an absurd claim, and Indonesia has now thoroughly debunked that claim. So there is no normalization between Indonesia and Israel. But now that it's been said, it's going to be hard to make anyone believe that it's not true.
Yeah. Even though it's coming from the government official.
Yeah, but you believe the Israelis said it, and you'll believe it from here on out.
Yeah.
And if the Indonesians now have said that it's not true, you won't believe them.
Yeah. We're not talking about the ordinary person on the street here. We're talking about a government official.
Yeah. The government has said this is not true.
Yeah.
But you won't believe them.
Yeah.
You will. I know how these people are. They'll say, well, of course they won't admit it.
Right.
But you will wholeheartedly believe the Israelis. You'll wholeheartedly believe Zionist propaganda. They can't possibly be lying. When have we ever known them to lie? Right? Because you think the worst of Muslims and pretend that that's because of your iman or something. Pretend that that's because of your dedication and your commitment to Islam, when there's no one on the face of the earth that you have a lower opinion of than Muslims.